Hello, dear listener. Welcome to Calm Cloud Chronicles, where imagination drifts and stories unfold. Sit back, relax, and let the journey begin. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more soothing tales. The legend of Thor's fishing trip. The sea was restless that day, grey waves crashing against the sturdy hull of the giant Hymir's boat. Thor, the god of thunder, stood at the bow, his fiery red hair whipping in the wind. His eyes burned with determination, fixed on the horizon where his adversary lurked, Jörmungandr, the Midgard Serpent, a creature so vast it encircled the world. Thor gripped his bait, a massive ox head, freshly severed, its blood dripping into the churning ocean below. Hymir watched uneasily, clutching the oars tighter, his giant frame seeming small in the face of Thor's boundless resolve. "You tempt fate," Hymir muttered, his voice heavy with foreboding. Thor laughed, a booming sound that seemed to shake the sky itself. "Fate is mine to command," he declared, and with a mighty swing, he hurled the ox head into the sea. The bait sank deep into the abyss, pulling Thor's thick fishing line taut. For a moment, there was silence, the sea holding its breath. And then, from the depths, the ocean erupted. The Midgard Serpent broke the surface, its massive coils rising like mountains, its scales glinting like shards of metal in the pale light. Its eyes, glowing like molten lava, fixed on Thor. The god of thunder grinned, unflinching, and planted his feet firmly on the boat's deck. He pulled with all his might, the muscles in his arms bulging as he dragged the serpent closer. Hymir's face turned ashen as the serpent's monstrous form grew larger, its hiss echoing across the sky. The boat rocked violently, the waves threatening to capsize it. Thor, undeterred, seized his hammer, Mjolnir, the weapon that had felled giants and shattered mountains. He raised it high, ready to strike. But before Thor could deliver the killing blow, Hymir, consumed by fear, reached for his knife and severed the fishing line. The serpent roared, a sound that reverberated through the heavens and the earth, as it plunged back into the depths, disappearing into the darkness below. Thor turned to Hymir, his eyes blazing with fury. The giant recoiled, bracing for the wrath of the thunder god. But Thor, after a moment, let out a frustrated sigh and lowered his hammer. "Your fear has spared the serpent, for now," he said. "But its time will come." As the boat returned to shore, the sea calmed, its surface smooth once more. Yet Thor's thoughts churned like the waves had, for he knew that Jörmungandr was not defeated, only postponed. Their fateful battle was yet to come, destined to shake the very foundations of the cosmos. And so, Thor's fishing trip became a tale told through the ages, a testament to his strength, Hymir's fear, and the inevitability of Ragnarök. The boat reached the shore as twilight painted the horizon in hues of amber and violet. Thor leapt out, his boots sinking into the damp earth. He stood still for a moment, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the sea and sky met in quiet conspiracy. The Midgard Serpent's roar still echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder of the battle yet to come. Hymir, hesitant to speak, began unloading the boat. The giant's hands trembled as he handled the nets, but he stole wary glances at Thor. "You should be grateful," Hymir muttered under his breath, though it was loud enough to be heard. The beast was too great. "You could have doomed us all." Thor turned, his expression a tempest of restraint and fury. He strode toward Hymir, each step deliberate, and loomed over the giant. "Doomed us? Hymir, you robbed me of victory. You allowed chaos to slink back into the abyss when I had it by the throat." Before Hymir could respond, a raven descended from the heavens, its black wings cutting through the twilight. It landed on a nearby rock and cawed, its beady eyes glinting with intelligence. Thor recognized it at once as one of Odin's messengers. "Father sends you his regards," Thor said aloud to the bird, as if speaking directly to Odin. "Let him know the serpent still swims, and the reckoning will be delayed." The raven tilted its head, as if understanding, before it took off again, vanishing into the sky. Thor turned back to Hymir, but said nothing more. Instead, he gripped his hammer, the weight of Mjolnir grounding him. His mind churned, not with anger but with questions. Was Hymir's fear justified? Had he truly been unwise to seek the serpent now, before Ragnarok's appointed time? That night, Thor sat alone by a fire, the stars glittering above him. Each one felt like a distant soul, watching, waiting. The sea was calm now, almost unnervingly so, as if the serpent lurked just beneath the surface, mocking him. The flames danced in his eyes as he stared into the embers, lost in thought. Could it be that fate, which he had so boldly claimed to command, was guiding his steps in ways he could not yet understand? As the embers faded, he resolved himself anew. The serpent may have slipped away today, but it had not escaped its destiny, nor his. Thor clenched his fists, his knuckles pale in the firelight. Ragnarok would come, and when it did, he would meet the Midgard Serpent again, not as a fisherman, but as a warrior. In the distance, the sea sighed against the shore, a quiet reminder of what lay beneath, waiting. The dawn came quietly, brushing the sky with pale hues of gold and pink, yet Thor remained by the fading embers of his fire. The night had been long, filled with contemplation, and the god of thunder found himself drawn to thoughts of the serpent, not just as an enemy, but as a symbol of something greater. Jörmungandr, with its endless coils encircling the world, was not merely a monster to be slain. It was chaos given form, a force that balanced the order upheld by the gods. Could his battle with the serpent ever truly end, or was it destined to repeat in an eternal cycle? As he stood and stretched, the sea breeze carrying the salt of the ocean to his senses, the earth beneath his feet quaked gently, a tremor, faint yet undeniable. Thor's brows furrowed. It was no ordinary quake. He felt it in his blood, his divine essence attuned to the shifts of the cosmos. Something stirred deep beneath the waves, and he knew the serpent was restless. The raven returned, its black wings cutting through the air as it landed on a rock nearby. "News from my father?" Thor asked, though the raven offered no direct answer, only an ominous call that carried the weight of unspoken truths. Still, Thor understood. Odin was watching, as he always did, and perhaps even guiding Thor's path. The gods, for all their power, were not exempt from the unseen threads of fate. Determined to act, Thor made his way to a nearby village. The mortals there had whispered of strange happenings, of the sea's unusual behavior, of fish washing ashore as if fleeing something far greater. When Thor arrived, the villagers looked up in awe, their fear giving way to hope. They told him of the serpent's wake, of tremors that seemed to follow its movement along the ocean floor. One old woman approached Thor, her eyes milky with age, but still sharp with wisdom. She grasped his hand and whispered, "It stirs not out of malice, but because it senses the balance tipping. The day of reckoning comes closer, son of Odin. You may delay it, but you cannot halt it." Thor nodded, her words resonating with the thoughts that had plagued him all night. The serpent was not just his foe, it was his counterpart in a cosmic dance of order and chaos, light and shadow. To strike it down might bring temporary peace, but would it disrupt the delicate balance that bound the realms together? With these thoughts weighing heavy on his mind, Thor turned to the sea once more. The horizon stretched infinitely before him, a realm of mystery and power. He would not seek the serpent today, but he would remain vigilant. For now, his duty lay in protecting the realms from immediate threats, knowing full well that his ultimate battle loomed ever closer. And so, Thor stepped back from the precipice of action, choosing contemplation over wrath for the moment. Yet deep within, he burned with the certainty that when the time came, he would face Jörmungandr again, and their clash would echo through the fabric of the cosmos, altering its weave forever. The days turned to weeks, and life in the realms unfolded as it always had, fleeting and fragile for mortals, steady and powerful for the gods. Yet Thor's encounter with Jörmungandr lingered in his mind like the faint rumble of distant thunder. He could feel it, the subtle ripple in the cosmos, a shift he couldn't fully grasp but one that urged him forward. And so, he left the village behind and embarked on a journey, not to find the serpent again, but to seek answers. His path led him to Mimir's well, a sacred place nestled beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree. The well was guarded by Mimir, an ancient being whose wisdom was unparalleled. To drink from the well was to gain insight into the deepest truths of existence, but the price was steep. Thor approached cautiously, his hammer resting at his side. The air around the well was heavy, as if the weight of countless secrets hung in the mist. Mimir appeared from the shadows, his eyes gleaming with the light of knowledge. "Thor, son of Odin," Mimir said, his voice like the rustle of leaves in a silent forest. Thor nodded, his expression grim. "I seek to know the truth of my destiny and that of the serpent. Why does it haunt me? Why does fate bind us so tightly?" Mimir studied him for a long moment before gesturing toward the well. "The answers you seek lie within, but you know the cost. Are you prepared to give up a piece of yourself for the sake of wisdom?" Thor hesitated, uncharacteristically quiet. He thought of his impulsive nature, his reliance on strength and action. Perhaps it was time to sacrifice something more intangible, his certainty, his pride. With a solemn nod, he stepped closer, kneeling before the well. Mimi handed him a cup, and Thor drank deeply. Visions engulfed him. He saw the serpent not as an enemy, but as a reflection, a force that mirrored his own. Just as Thor was bound to protect, to enforce order, the serpent was bound to challenge, to disrupt. They were two sides of the same coin, locked in an eternal dance that maintained the balance of the cosmos. To destroy the serpent was to tip the scales, and the consequences of that imbalance were beyond imagining. But Thor also saw Ragnarök, the end of all things. He saw himself standing against Jörmungandr, their final battle raging amidst the collapse of the cosmos. He felt the weight of his hammer, the surge of his power, and the inevitability of their clash. And then, as the vision faded, he saw something else, a spark of hope, a glimmer of renewal that followed the destruction. Thor stumbled back, the cup falling from his hands. His breathing was labored, his mind reeling. "Balance," he murmured. "It's all about balance." Mimi nodded, his expression unreadable. "Now you understand. The serpent is not your enemy, Thor. It is your counterpart, your shadow. Together, you uphold the fragile harmony of existence. But when the end comes, it will not be your battle alone, it will be the battle of all things." Thor stood, steadier now, the weight of his revelation grounding him. He tightened his grip on Mjolnir, not out of anger but resolve. His journey was far from over, but he carried with him a deeper understanding of his place in the grand tapestry of existence. The thunder god turned away from the well, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The storm was coming, but this time, he would face it not just as a warrior, but as a guardian of balance, a god who understood that even in destruction, there could be renewal. Thor's footsteps carried him across the realms, each stride infused with the weight of his newfound understanding. He sought counsel with the gods, his siblings, and even mortals, each encounter adding a thread to the tapestry of his growing purpose. The world felt different now, the delicate interplay between order and chaos more vivid than ever. One day, as he wandered through Midgard, he came across a secluded valley shrouded in mist. The air was thick with an uncanny stillness, and yet Thor felt compelled to venture deeper. It was here that he encountered a figure he hadn't expected, a Valkyrie, standing tall and radiant, her armor gleaming like molten silver. "Thor," she said, her voice steady and clear. "You have seen the truth, but you are yet untested. The serpent stirs, but so too do greater forces. Chaos and order do not exist in isolation, they are entwined with the will of all beings." Thor frowned, gripping Mjolnir tightly. "I know the serpent's destiny, and my own. But what forces do you speak of?" The Valkyrie gestured toward the mist, and it parted like a veil to reveal a pool of water, its surface smooth and reflective. "Gaze," she said, "and see the threads that bind this world together." Thor approached, his reflection flickering on the pool's surface. As he looked, the water rippled, and visions unfolded. He saw mortals, fragile yet resilient, struggling, creating, destroying, and rebuilding. Their choices, small and immense, rippled across the realms. He saw giants and elves, dwarfs and creatures of shadow, each playing their part in the grand symphony of existence. And then, he saw the serpent again, its coils weaving through the fabric of reality. It was not alone. Forces of chaos and order surrounded it, each vying for dominance, their clash echoing through eternity. But amidst the chaos, Thor saw something surprising, moments of harmony, brief yet profound, where opposing forces balanced one another in fragile beauty. Thor looked up at the Valkyrie, his expression thoughtful. The serpent and I, we are part of this balance. Our battle is inevitable, but its outcome is not yet written. There is more to this than fate. She nodded, her gaze unwavering. You are correct. The gods often speak of destiny, but it is the choices made along the way that shape its path. When Ragnarök comes, it will not be only your strength that determines the fate of the realms, it will be your understanding of what lies beyond victory and defeat. Thor stood silently for a moment, the weight of her words settling within him. He turned back to the pool, his reflection staring back with newfound clarity. The serpent was his counterpart, his challenge, but it was also a teacher, a force that reminded him of the fragility and interconnectedness of all things. As Thor left the valley, the mist closed behind him, and the Valkyrie vanished from sight. But her words lingered in his mind, echoing with every step he took. The battle with Jörmungandr was inevitable, yet Thor felt ready not only to face the serpent, but to embrace the lessons that the encounter would bring. Thor's journey continued, each moment weaving him more deeply into the fabric of the cosmos. The storm was coming, and with it, the chance to shape not only his destiny, but the destiny of all realms. Thor traveled onward, each step infused with the weight of purpose and the clarity he had gained. His journey took him beyond the familiar realms of the gods and mortals, into places untouched by time, where even whispers of the world tree's roots could be felt. He sought not only answers but allies, for the battle that awaited him would demand more than strength and wisdom. It would require unity among all who shared the threads of existence. One day, Thor found himself on the edge of Jörmungandr, the primordial void that had birthed both fire and ice, and from which all creation had sprung. Standing there, he felt the pulse of the cosmos, a rhythm so ancient and deep it seemed to resonate within his very being. It was here, at the crossroads of chaos and order, that he encountered the Norns. The Norns, weaving the fabric of fate from their loom, turned their piercing gaze to the thunder god. They were ancient beyond comprehension, their forms both graceful and intimidating. Urd, the keeper of the past, Verdandi, the weaver of the present, and Skuld, the herald of the future. Together, they held the threads of all existence. Thor, Urd spoke first, her voice like the rustle of dry leaves. You stand at the edge of knowing, and yet you seek more. Verdandi stepped forward, her hands deftly working the loom as she spoke. You have glimpsed the balance, the dance of forces that binds the cosmos. But do you understand your place within it? Thor met their gaze evenly. I know that I am bound to the serpent. I know that our battle will shape the destiny of all realms. But beyond that, I seek to understand what follows destruction." Skuld smiled faintly, her eyes gleaming with the light of possibilities. Destruction is but one end. Beyond it lies renewal, but only if the threads are woven carefully. The Norns gestured toward their loom, inviting Thor closer. As he approached, he saw the threads, vivid, shimmering lines that represented every life, every action, every choice. The serpent's thread was dark and twisting, yet it interwove with his own, their colors mingling in a complex pattern. He saw other threads, too, those of mortals, gods, and creatures, each playing its part in the tapestry. "You are not alone," Verdandi said, her hands pausing for a moment. "The serpent is only one thread. There are others that will shape the outcome of Ragnarök, threads you must strengthen if renewal is to follow destruction." Thor looked at the threads, his heart heavy but resolute. He saw the threads of his siblings, Loki's chaotic brilliance, Baldur's gentle light, and the threads of mortals whose courage and ingenuity often defied even the gods' expectations. He understood now that his role was not simply to fight, but to lead, to unite, and to ensure that the tapestry held strong even in the face of unraveling. With newfound clarity, Thor bowed to the Norns and turned away from the loom. "I will honor the threads and the balance they uphold. When Ragnarök comes, we will face it together." The Norns' voices echoed behind him as he walked away, their tone both cryptic and encouraging. "Remember, Thor, the loom is ever-changing. Strengthen the threads, but do not cling to them. Only then will the cosmos find harmony once more." As Thor left Jörmungandr, he felt the burden of his destiny shift, not lighter, but shared. His steps quickened with purpose as he resolved to gather allies, to forge bonds that would withstand the storm. The serpent awaited, but so too did the hope of renewal. Thor ventured forth, his resolve solidifying with each step as he embraced the wisdom shared by the Norns. The thunder god understood now that the storm ahead would require more than brute strength. It would demand unity among the realms, a collective will strong enough to withstand Ragnarök's unraveling. And so, Thor began his task, forging alliances with those whose threads intertwined with his own. The first realm he visited was Alfheim, the land of the light elves. Verdant and radiant, Alfheim shimmered like a dream, its forests alive with golden light that danced through the leaves. Thor approached the elves' leader, Freyja, who greeted him with a smile that carried both warmth and cunning. "Thor," Freyja said, her voice musical but edged with sharpness. "It is not often that you seek the company of elves. Tell me, what drives the thunder god to our door?" Thor inclined his head respectfully. "Freyja, the end draws near. You know of the serpent, the imbalance it brings. I have seen the threads of fate, and I know that our battle will shape not only the realms, but existence itself. I ask for your aid, for your people's wisdom and strength." Freyja studied him for a moment, her keen eyes searching his face. "The threads are fragile, Thor, but they hold together because they are diverse. The elves have long woven their light into the fabric of life, but what you ask is no small thing. Why should we stand with you against the serpent's chaos? Thor stepped closer, his voice steady and resolute. Because it is not merely the serpent we face. It is the imbalance of all forces, the unraveling of the cosmos. You know as well as I do that strength alone will not win this battle. It is the harmony of our efforts, the unity of our resolve, that will ensure renewal follows destruction. Freyja's smile softened, though a trace of mischief remained. You speak well, son of Odin. Perhaps there is hope in your words. The elves shall consider your call. As Thor departed Alfheim, a soft light accompanied him, a sign that the elves had begun their deliberations. He felt the weight of progress, knowing that even a tentative alliance was a step closer to fortifying the threads of fate. His journey continued to Jotunheim, the land of the giants. Unlike the radiant beauty of Alfheim, Jotunheim was wild and untamed, its mountains steep and shrouded in frost. Thor approached the giants cautiously, knowing well their enmity toward Asgard. Yet he sought their aid nonetheless, for even chaos had its place in the balance. The giants' leader, Thrym, towered over Thor, his icy gaze piercing. You come to Jotunheim? Bold, even for the thunder god. Speak quickly, lest the frost take you. Thor remained unfazed, his voice firm. Thrym, the serpent stirs, and the balance of the realms falters. I do not ask you to stand with the gods, but to stand for the preservation of all existence. The serpent's chaos will not spare Jotunheim, nor any realm. We must face it together. He laughed, the sound deep and resonant. You ask much, Thor. The giants do not easily forget the wrath of Asgard. But you speak of balance, of chaos and renewal. Perhaps you understand more than I expected. Thor extended his hand, an offering not of friendship, but of mutual purpose. The serpent threatens us all. Stand with me, and let us ensure the realms endure. Thrym stared at him for a long moment before gripping Thor's hand. Very well, Thunder God. The giants will consider your call, but know that we do not bend easily. As Thor left Jotunheim, the frost seemed less biting, a subtle shift that hinted at the possibility of an alliance. He traveled onward, visiting the dwarfs of Nidavellir, the mortals of Midgard, and others who held threads in the grand tapestry. Each encounter tested his resolve, yet Thor found strength in the growing connections between realms. The storm loomed ever closer, yet Thor felt its weight distributed across the alliances he forged. The serpent awaited, its coils stirring in the depths, but Thor knew that when the battle came, it would not be his alone. The threads of fate would weave together, and in their unity lay the hope of renewal. Thor's journey continued, a deliberate path through realms both familiar and strange. With each step, the thunder god grew not only as a warrior, but as a uniter of worlds, weaving a fragile yet resilient coalition among the threads of existence. But the closer he drew to the inevitability of Ragnarök, the more the serpent stirred. It began subtly, a tremor beneath the seas, an unnatural stillness in the air. Mortals whispered of strange storms that darkened the skies without warning, their thunder louder than any Thor had ever summoned. In the shadows of Midgard's forests, animals grew restless, sensing the shift in balance. Across the realms, the signs were clear: Jörmungandr was rising. Thor stood atop a cliff overlooking the churning ocean, Mjolnir heavy in his hand. He could feel it now, a presence deep beneath the waves, ancient and vast. The serpent's movement resonated in his bones, a vibration that carried both menace and inevitability. But this time, Thor was not alone. Behind him stood the allies he had gathered. From Alfheim came a delegation of light elves, their weapons gleaming and their chants harmonizing with the hum of the cosmos. From Jotunheim, a band of frost giants, their towering forms silent but their eyes alight with purpose. Mortals from Midgard, armed with courage and ingenuity, stood beside them. And from Nidavellir, the master forgers of the dwarfs had sent weapons imbued with the very essence of the World Tree. Freyja stepped forward, her expression serene yet fierce. "Thor," she said, "the serpent's awakening is but the first of many trials. It tests you, and not only your strength, but the bonds you have forged. Remember what you fight for." Thor nodded, turning back to the ocean. The storm above was gathering, lightning illuminating the vast expanse of water. "I fight for balance," he said, his voice steady. "For the hope that even in destruction, there can be renewal." The ground shook violently, and from the depths, a colossal form began to rise. Jörmungandr, its scales reflecting the storm's fury, emerged with a roar that shook the very fabric of reality. Its eyes, glowing like twin suns, locked onto Thor. The thunder god stepped forward, raising Mjolnir high. But this time, he did not charge recklessly into battle. Instead, he turned to his allies, his voice echoing above the storm. "This is not my fight alone," he called. "Together, we stand for all realms, for the threads that bind us." And so, the battle began. Lightning clashed with frost, light wove through shadow, and chaos met order in a dance as old as creation itself. Thor and his allies fought not to destroy the serpent, but to hold the balance, to ensure that the threads of fate did not unravel completely. The struggle was immense, the serpent's power unmatched. Yet within the chaos, moments of harmony emerged, when a giant shielded an elf, when a mortal's ingenuity saved a frost giant, when Thor's hammer struck not out of anger but with the precision of understanding. Slowly, the serpent began to falter, its roars less defiant, its coils less threatening. As the storm began to wane, Thor stood face to face with Jörmungandr. The serpent's massive head lowered, its gaze meeting Thor's. In that moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. They were not enemies but counterparts, two forces that upheld the fragile balance of existence. Thor lowered Mjolnir, and the serpent, with a final, rumbling sigh, sank back into the depths. The ocean calmed, its surface smooth once more, as if the battle had been but a passing storm. The thunder god turned to his allies, who stood weary but triumphant. "The serpent will rise again," Thor said, his voice carrying both warning and hope. "But so too will we. The balance holds, for now." The stillness that followed the battle hung in the air like the echo of a distant storm, but Thor knew that peace was never a permanent state, it was merely the calm before the next surge of chaos. As the serpent retreated into the abyss, Thor felt the weight of its presence deep within the ocean, subdued but not defeated. He turned to his allies, their faces marked by exhaustion yet illuminated by triumph. "Rest now," Thor said, his voice resonating like the roll of thunder over a distant horizon. "Today, we have held the balance. But this is only the beginning. The serpent will rise again, and Ragnarök draws ever closer. When it does, we must be prepared, not just for battle, but for what lies beyond." Freyja stepped forward, her armor gleaming as she placed a hand on Thor's shoulder. "You have shown more than strength today, Thor. You have shown wisdom. The alliances you have forged will not break easily, even under the weight of the storm to come." Thor nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on the horizon. Beyond the ocean, he could feel the pulse of the cosmos, the threads of fate shifting and weaving as the realms continued their delicate dance. The serpent's retreat was only a reprieve, a momentary pause in the inevitable cycle of chaos and order. The days that followed were marked by rebuilding. In Midgard, the mortals banded together to repair what the serpent's stirring had disrupted. Thor worked among them, not as a god demanding worship, but as a figure of unity, helping to steady the fragile balance that had been shaken. The light elves of Alfheim shared their wisdom with the mortals, teaching them the ways of harmony and resilience. The frost giants of Jotunheim, once feared and mistrusted, lent their strength to the effort, proving that even chaos could be a force of creation when tempered by purpose. The dwarfs of Nidavellir crafted tools and artifacts that would help the realms withstand the next wave of destruction. But Thor's thoughts remained heavy. He had faced the serpent not as a foe to be vanquished, but as a force to be understood. Its presence in the cosmos was not a mistake, it was a necessity, a reminder that balance could only exist when opposing forces held each other in check. Yet Ragnarök would demand more than understanding. It would demand sacrifice. One night, as Thor stood alone beneath the stars, a raven landed beside him, its black feathers gleaming in the moonlight. Thor recognized it immediately as one of Odin's messengers. He knelt beside the bird, his voice low. "Tell my father that the storm approaches. Tell him I will stand, not just as his son, but as a guardian of balance. And when the serpent rises again, I will face it not with fury, but with purpose." The raven tilted its head, its gaze sharp and knowing. With a single, piercing call, it took flight, disappearing into the night. Thor watched it go, his thoughts swirling like the clouds above. The thunder god knew that the battle with Jörmungandr had been a prelude, a test not of his strength, but of his understanding. The threads of fate continued to weave, and the realms held their breath, waiting for the storm that would reshape existence itself. As Thor turned to leave, the stars above seemed to shimmer brighter, as if offering a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. The journey was far from over, but Thor felt ready to face whatever lay ahead, not alone, but as part of a tapestry that bound all realms together. In the quiet aftermath of the serpent's retreat, the realms carried on their tenuous balance, but the signs of Ragnarök crept closer with each passing day. Thor, though momentarily resting from his efforts, felt the weight of time pressing on him. He understood now that his task was not merely to defend the realms, but to prepare them, together, for the storm that would reshape all of existence. The call came in the stillness of dawn. A tremor rippled through the skies, faint but insistent. Thor stood on the cliffs overlooking Midgard seas, watching as a lone figure approached. It was a messenger, one of the Vani, bearing a message sealed in the gold-touched wax of Vanaheim. The Vani messenger bowed, their movements fluid, almost ethereal. "Thor," they began, voice soft yet firm, "Freyja calls for you." There is a disturbance in Vanaheim, an imbalance that threatens to spread across the realms. Thor's brow furrowed. Vanaheim was a realm of fertility, light, and harmony. If even it, a place so entwined with the life force of existence, began to unravel, then the dominoes of cosmic order might fall faster than anyone imagined. He gripped Mjolnir tightly. "Tell Freyja I will come." When Thor arrived in Vanaheim, he found the golden field shadowed by an unnatural gloom. The rivers, once pristine and alive with shimmering fish, were murky, their waters sluggish. Freyja greeted him at the threshold of her hall, her expression as resolute as ever, but her eyes betrayed a deep concern. "Thor," she said, "this is not the doing of mortals or gods. Something ancient stirs beneath the surface, a force that disrupts the balance we fight to maintain." Thor surveyed the land, sensing the underlying disturbance. It felt familiar, though it was not the serpent. No, this was subtler, a ripple rather than a roar, yet no less dangerous. "What do you believe it to be?" he asked. Freyja's gaze turned toward the horizon. "There are whispers of the Void Weavers, creatures older than the gods themselves, entities who thrive in the unraveling of existence. They dwell beyond the threads of fate, preying on moments of weakness, on the fraying of balance." Thor's grip on Mjolnir tightened. He had heard tales of the Void Weavers, though they were more myth than history. They were said to move in the spaces between creation and destruction, feeding on the entropy that spiraled from conflict and chaos. If they were stirring now, it meant that the realm's fragile harmony was indeed nearing its breaking point. "We cannot face this alone," Thor said, turning to Freyja. "If the Void Weavers thrive in imbalance, then we must show them the strength of unity. Summon the Vani, the mortals, and all those who stand for the preservation of balance." Freyja nodded, her resolve hardening. "Very well. But Thor, understand this, the Void Weavers are not like the serpent. They cannot be fought with strength alone. They are shadows, whispers, and threads of doubt. To defeat them, you must confront not only their power, but your own fear and uncertainty." Thor met her gaze, his expression firm. "I have faced my doubts before, and I will face them again. If the Void Weavers come to unravel the threads of existence, they will find us ready." As the forces of Vanaheim began to assemble, Thor stood at the heart of their gathering, his presence a beacon of strength and unity. The coming battle would test not only his might but the very essence of his purpose. For the Void Weavers did not merely threaten the balance, they sought to unmake it entirely, leaving only a hollow void where creation had once thrived. The storm of Ragnarök loomed closer, but Thor's path was no longer solitary. The tapestry of alliances he had woven was growing stronger with each thread, a testament to the resilience and interconnectedness of the realms. The sun hung low on the horizon, bathing Vanaheim's golden fields in shades of amber as Thor stood amid the gathering forces. The Vani worked swiftly, their light-infused crafts and chants building protective barriers and imbuing their weapons with ethereal energy. Across the assembled forces, a sense of unity prevailed, though shadows of uncertainty lingered. Thor felt it in the air, the Void Weavers were close. As night fell, the land grew quiet, unnervingly so. The once vibrant fields dimmed further, their glow muted by an unseen presence. The whispers began, soft, fleeting, yet piercing, as though threading into the minds of those present. Thor tightened his grip on Mjolnir, his focus unshaken. He turned to Freyja, her form radiant yet tense. "They are here," Freyja said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. The Void Weavers move through doubt, through fear. They will challenge not only our strength, but the very bonds that unite us. Thor nodded, stepping forward to face the creeping darkness that descended upon the land. The whispers grew louder, twisting and intertwining, forming shapes in the air like threads unraveling. Shadows emerged from these threads, indistinct yet menacing, their forms shifting constantly as though resisting definition. They were the Void Weavers, ancient entities born of imbalance, predators of unraveling fates. The battlefield erupted in chaos as the Void Weavers struck, not with brute force, but with subtle, insidious attacks. They targeted the minds of Thor's allies, planting seeds of doubt, mistrust, and fear. Among the elves, whispers questioned their purpose; among the frost giants, echoes of past grievances against the gods stirred resentment; among the mortals, fears of insignificance in the face of cosmic forces began to spread. Thor stood at the center, his hammer raised high, summoning a thunderous strike that illuminated the battlefield. "Hold fast!" he called, his voice breaking through the whispers. "Remember why you stand together, remember the balance we fight to preserve." The allies rallied, their bonds beginning to mend as Thor's words cut through the Void Weaver's influence. Yet the entities were relentless, weaving threads of discord faster than Thor could counter. Freyja joined him, her chants harmonizing with his thunder, creating bursts of light that drove back the shadows. But even this was not enough. In the midst of the chaos, Thor realized that strength alone could not defeat the Void Weavers. They thrived on imbalance, on the fraying of unity. To overcome them, the threads of fate needed to be strengthened not by force, but by understanding and connection. Thor stepped away from the battle center, his voice rising above the chaos. "Listen to me," he called out. The Void Weavers thrive on doubt, on the spaces between us. But we are more than individual threads, we are a tapestry. Together, we are unbreakable. The allies began to heed his words, turning their focus not just to the shadows before them, but to each other. Elves and giants fought side by side, their differences forgotten. Mortals and dwarfs worked in tandem, their ingenuity and resilience amplifying their efforts. Thor and Freyja stood as beacons, their combined strength inspiring the forces to unite against the Void Weaver's whispers. The battlefield shifted. The threads of discord began to snap, the Void Weaver's forms flickering as their influence waned. The allies, strengthened by their unity, pushed forward, their combined efforts unraveling the entities that had sought to unmake them. One by one, the Void Weavers dissipated, their shadowy forms dissolving into the air. As dawn broke, the golden fields of Vanaheim began to glow once more, their light restored. The allies stood victorious, weary yet resolute. Thor looked out over the battlefield, his chest heavy but his heart lightened by the triumph of unity. Freyja approached him, her expression thoughtful. "You have shown us the strength of connection, Thor. The Void Weavers sought to unmake us, but together we have proven that even in the face of unraveling, the tapestry can endure." Thor nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The serpent still stirs, and Ragnarök looms. But now, we stand stronger than before. The threads of fate will hold. The forces of Vanaheim dispersed, each returning to their realms with renewed purpose and understanding. Thor remained for a moment longer, the morning light casting his shadow across the land. He knew that the Void Weaver's defeat was but one battle in a greater war, but he felt prepared, for when Ragnarök came, he would face it with allies bound by unity, and a tapestry woven strong enough to withstand even the most devastating storm. The realms grew quiet, but it was a silence fraught with expectation. Though the Void Weavers had been defeated, their presence left ripples in the cosmic fabric, a reminder that the balance Thor and his allies had fought to uphold was still precarious. Thor felt the weight of the serpent stirring more strongly with each passing day, its presence an ever-looming shadow beneath the sea surface. Yet he knew that rushing into confrontation would only hasten the unraveling of fate. He needed time, a rare commodity in the face of Ragnarök, to prepare further. One evening, as Thor sat among the mortals of Midgard, the sky darkened. The stars, which had always been fixed and steady, began to shimmer erratically, as if the threads of the cosmos themselves were trembling. Thor looked upward, sensing the presence of another force, a new player in the unfolding saga of destruction and renewal. This was not the serpent nor the Void Weavers, but something else entirely. A streak of light descended from the heavens, landing in a clearing just beyond the village. Thor rose, Mjolnir in hand, and strode toward the source, the mortals watching in awe and apprehension. As he approached, he saw a figure standing amidst the fading brilliance of the light, a being clad in an armor that shimmered like starlight, its presence otherworldly yet familiar. The figure spoke, its voice resonating with a cadence that seemed to echo through time. "Thor, son of Odin, guardian of balance, I have come not to fight but to warn." Thor raised his hammer, his eyes narrowing. "Speak quickly. The realms cannot afford idle words." The figure stepped forward, its face now visible, a visage both radiant and solemn, as though it carried the weight of countless worlds. "I am Kala, a traveler of the cosmic web, a weaver of harmony and chaos alike. The serpent stirs, but there are forces beyond even its will that seek to disrupt the balance. The threads of fate fray not simply from destruction, but from neglect. You must see beyond the immediate storm to what lies beneath. Kayla gestured to the sky, and Thor saw the stars rearrange themselves into patterns, symbols of realms connected by the delicate threads of existence. He recognized some, the constellations of Midgard, the runes of Asgard. But others were foreign, their shapes unfamiliar yet compelling. You have fought valiantly, Kayla continued, but the serpent is only a fragment of the imbalance. The web stretches far beyond what you have seen. If you focus solely on one battle, the rest may unravel. You must weave the realms together, strengthen not just the threads, but the bonds that define them. Thor lowered Mjolnir slightly, his expression thoughtful. And how am I to do this? I have gathered allies, fought against chaos, upheld balance. What more can be done? Kayla's gaze softened. You must look not just outward, but inward. The serpent is your counterpart, your reflection. To truly understand its role in the cosmos, you must confront your own fears, your own doubts. Only then can you mend the fraying threads and face the storm with purpose. Thor remained silent for a long moment, the weight of Kayla's words settling within him. He had always been a warrior, a fighter who charged into battle without hesitation. But now, he realized that strength alone was insufficient. The storm ahead demanded not just action, but introspection, connection, and the willingness to embrace uncertainty. As Kayla turned to leave, their forms shimmering like the fading light of a dying star, they spoke once more. The tapestry is vast, Thor, and you are but one thread. But a single thread, when woven with care, can hold the weight of a realm. Remember this as you face what lies ahead. Thor watched as Kayla vanished into the night, their presence lingering like the faint glow of starlight. He returned to the village, his thoughts heavy but resolute. The serpent awaited, and Ragnarök loomed closer. Yet now, Thor carried with him not just strength, but the knowledge that the web of existence depended on more than the clash of opposing forces. It depended on unity, understanding, and the courage to face what could not be seen. The serpent stirred one last time, its vast coils retreating into the fathomless depths of the cosmic ocean. Thor, now tempered by wisdom and bound by the alliances he had forged, stood atop the cliff overlooking the horizon. He felt the pulse of the serpent beneath the waves, not as a foe to be vanquished, but as a counterpart, a force that challenged him to grow, to reflect, and to preserve balance. The realms, though shaken, stood strong. The light elves of Alfheim, the frost giants of Jotunheim, the mortals of Midgard, and the steadfast Vani, all carried forward the unity born of trials faced together. The Void Weavers had been defeated, the threads of fate strengthened by the bonds Thor and his allies had woven. Even Kayla's celestial warning lingered in Thor's mind, a beacon guiding him toward the greater harmony yet to be achieved. Thor turned his gaze to the heavens, the stars shimmering like the countless threads of a vast tapestry. Ragnarök still loomed, a storm inevitable, but Thor carried within him the understanding that destruction was not the end. It was transformation, a prelude to renewal. And so, the thunder god lowered Mjolnir, its weight no longer a burden but a symbol of purpose. With every step, every clash, and every alliance, he had become not just a warrior, but a guardian of balance, a weaver of fate in a cosmos ever-changing. The serpent would rise again, and the storm would come. But Thor, and the realms united behind him, would stand ready, not just for battle, but for what lay beyond. The story of Thor and the serpent does not end here, for the threads of fate continue to weave, infinite and enduring. Yet, for now, the cosmos holds, and balance prevails. Thank you for being a part of Calm Cloud Chronicles. What kind of stories help you relax the most? Please let us know in comments below. If you enjoyed this story, let us know by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Until next time, stay peaceful and keep dreaming.